The Democratic Party might see this as a bit more of a symbolic victory, one that shows that when there is a diverse electorate, when there is a positive message, and when one says one wants to go up against Donald Trump directly, that Democrats can win.
Zohran Mandani will become the next mayor of New York City. It happened overnight. He posted this video after his victory was projected by the American TV networks.
The next and last stop is City Hall.
There you go, TikTok. 34-year-old, he knows how to play the game, doesn't he?
He knows how to play the game. Mamdani calls himself a democratic socialist, and his victory speech celebrated a shift in power to the workers of New York. He quoted an early 20th century American socialist and trade unionist as he told supporters, "Hope is alive."
The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands.
It's just a little hint of Obama-style intonation. It's a little bit more shrill, isn't it? But there's just the beginnings of some sort of rhythm to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how Eugene Debs' optimism turned out for the American century, but I'm not entirely sure that capitalism was massively weakened over the course of the last 100 years. Donald Trump has called Zohran Mandani a communist and backed the old-school Democrat Andrew Cuomo. The front page of the New York Post reads, "The Red Apple, on your marks, M-A-R-X, get set, Zoe. Socialist Mamdani wins race for mayor." Mamdani told his supporters he hopes Cuomo's name won't come up again.
My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. I wish Andrew Cuomo only the best in private life. But let tonight be the final time I utter his name as we turn the page on a politics that abandons the many and answers only to the few.
Cuomo conceded in the early hours our time this morning he didn't want his supporters to boo his opponent.
Congratulations to Zohran Mandani. No. That is not right. That is not right, and that is not us. That is not us. Tonight was their night, and as they start to transition to government, we will all help any way we can because we need our New York City government to work. We want it to work for all New Yorkers because our city is the greatest city in the world, and we will unite for New York City because we love New York City.
Well, that was former Governor Andrew Cuomo. The Republican candidate who came third was Curtis Sliwa, known for his former career of tackling subway muggers in a beret. Well, Philip Crowther is a correspondent for the Associated Press, and he has been at Zohran Mamdani's election party most of the night in New York. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Well, we should ask you that first, I suppose. What was the atmosphere like? It sounds like it was a great do.
Oh, absolutely. It was a celebratory atmosphere, undoubtedly. I think there wasn't all that much doubt as to who was going to win this election here in New York City, but still, Zohran Mamdani came from so far away, and he had been given pretty much no chance at all of becoming mayor of New York, that there was still this pinch me moment for a lot of his supporters who were trickling into the ballroom where this event was being held. And in fact, they were still coming into the room when the race was being called. That's how quickly it became clear that he was going to have a clear advantage over the former governor of the state, Andrew Cuomo. It was a very diverse crowd, as you would expect from the people who have been volunteering and working for the Mamdani campaign, and in the end, those who got him into office. His, again, was a speech during which he promised the promises he made during the campaign season, where he said that he would bring free buses to New York City, free childcare as well, that those apartments whose prices, whose rent can be controlled by the New York City government would have their rents frozen. All of those very popular and populist, if you will, promises from Zohran Mamdani. In his speech also, he was pretty aggressive towards the US President Donald Trump, addressing him directly and essentially saying that he would be ready for a fight. Remember that Donald Trump said that if Mamdani was to be elected mayor of New York, he would keep federal funds for New York City to an absolute minimum.
And what's been behind Mamdani's success? Because I think that there was a bit of hesitancy from some Democrats about the scale of the promises that he's making. And we know that he doesn't necessarily have full control over all of them, for example, on rent control. So what is it that he's managed to do in New York to mobilize so many people to vote for him in this way?
Well, I think there's no doubt about this being another anti-establishment vote, much like the vote that got Donald Trump into office. That's a strange comparison maybe to make between Mamdani and Trump, but still, in the words of Mamdani himself tonight here in New York, this election brought a political dynasty to the end, and he's talking here about the political dynasty of the Cuomo family and former governor Andrew Cuomo. I think there are obviously a lot of people in New York who are fed up with that establishment, and more than anything, who want the city to be affordable. That was the main theme of Zohran Mamdani's election, really, was that the prices of a lot of things in New York have to go down for things to become affordable and livable for people in this city again. Now, the Democratic Party might see this as a bit more of a symbolic victory, one that shows that when there is a diverse electorate, when there is a positive message, and when one says one wants to go up against Donald Trump directly, that Democrats can win. Now, it's important to say, though, that on this election night in the United States, yes, Zohran Mamdani won, and he calls himself a democratic socialist. He's very much on the left side of the Democratic Party. There were other wins for governor in the likes of Virginia and New Jersey. Those were won by two women who would put themselves more in the centrist or moderate part of the Democratic Party. So a very, very diverse set of wins for the Democratic Party that can't really lead to any clear conclusions other than this was a very successful night for them.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be celebrating. And I've seen Donald Trump posting online suggesting that the government shutdown is to blame for what's happened to the Republicans. It sounds like there's more to it than that. Philip, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That's Philip Crowther, correspondent for the Associated Press, who spent the night at Zohran Mamdani's election party in New York.
We learnt yesterday that I think only 12% of Americans would consider themselves socialist. So how would a real left-wing insurgent, rent-controlling, price-reducing socialist play in Wisconsin or Middle America? And the answer, the received wisdom is it wouldn't. But, you know, who would have said Donald Trump would have taken America in 2016? But maybe things are changing.
They're both making the cost of living argument, though. I mean, they both made that argument. Donald Trump via America First and a slightly different method, but they're making the same argument, which is your life feels a bit unfair and I'm going to fix it. And we talked yesterday on our programme about the scale of promises versus the political reality. It's very, very much an issue in this country. The Chancellor is discovering that very harshly. And will that same recognition fall upon Mamdani now in the fact that he's made some incredibly ambitious promises, which he doesn't have the political ability to fulfill. He'll need the buy-in of other politicians who've been hesitant, especially when it comes to raising taxes, for example. And New York will be a fascinating example of what politicians can and can't do on the ground. There's also an element I read a really great article in the New York Times about this, about how what Mamdani's done is mobilise a generation that feel really lonely. and they feel this kind of generation that grew up under COVID regulations, and they didn't get the same opportunities others had. His campaign, I think he had 90,000 volunteers at its peak. It's got people to feel like they could go out and socialise and group together and not be lonely anymore, which is A, pretty sad and damning, and B, really interesting for political campaigns.